On this Millennial review, we're going to replace this old stainless steel two-basin sink. It's a 33 by 22 sink that's in my kitchen here. And we're going to install the new Glacier Bay large kitchen bowl sink. So now the underside of your sink is probably going to vary from mine. So this is likely going to be a little bit of a custom job for each of you. And in fact, because I'm going from two different basins to one, I need to make sure that after I get this done, I figure out the proper routing and that sort of thing for all of these pipes so I can run just one drain. Now before we get started, there's going to be a few tools. You're definitely going to need a large set of adjustables because that's going to help take some of this apart. In my case, I needed a very long Craftsman screwdriver, and that's because underneath the sink are these clips. So these clips are actually what holds the sink down and connects up to kind of the couple-inch thick countertop that I have. The way yours is installed, you'll probably need to take a look at yourself. And if you're doing this from the get-go, you won't even need to do that. Now, what we'll start with is we need to disconnect the two lines that are back there for the water. Now, depending on your setup, you may have water shutoffs just like I do. It's going to be really important that you shut off the water before you do anything. Now I'm going to use a small adjustable wrench here, and I'm going to start to take these off. What I did do is I've got a little catch bucket here because these, of course, are going to drain some water. That's why we have the bucket there. Great. And now we've got to tackle the two connections to the underside of our sink. So to do that, we're going to use our pliers here. Go ahead, open these all the way, and it's just going to be lefty-loosey to unscrew those away from the drain from the sink. Great. And with those free, we should now be able to pop the sink out. The next step is to unscrew these clips that you'll see holding your sink to the underside of your countertop. These typically have a flat blade screwdriver on them that you'll unscrew lefty-loosey, which will allow them to come off. And then we can move about taking the sink out. So all we got to do now to take the sink out is go ahead and push up from the bottom. And then it pulls straight out. And then now you'll see the nice large cutout from where that original sink was installed. What I will want to do is just make sure that you clean up all of the caulking for the edges of the sink to keep it watertight with your countertop, because we'll want to redo that with the new one. Wow, this thing looks nice. Look at that. That is a very nice looking sink. So on the underside here, you'll see these tracks. Those tracks are what this slides into and actually clamps to the underside of your countertop. So let's go ahead and find out if this thing fits in the existing hole. Now your mileage may vary, but it's going to be way too easy if this actually fits right into the existing hole. Whew, look at that. That fits up perfect. So now that we know everything will fit, our next step here is we're going to go ahead and start to add the faucet, the drain, all of that very important good stuff here. So go ahead, pop this back out, and now we'll get started on that. So this is going to be our lockdown piece that's actually going to lock it down. We've got our very nice looking soap dispenser, which is great because once it's installed, it's going to be really easy to drop out and refill here. But so that's got the lock, nice little squirter action. It's going to come with a small Allen key that we'll need later on. Then you're going to, of course, have this weight and the portion that goes into it. And then finally the faucet. So this thing, I'll tell you, is a work of art. This is pretty nice looking. So the first thing it's going to have us do to install is go ahead, slide all of these pieces down through the center, just like that. We're going to have our handle off to the side here. And then with that installed, we've got to take this guy and we're actually going to thread that up on the bottom here. So all these hoses go through. And then that's going to begin to thread to tighten up. From there, our next step is we've got to attach these two quick connectors. So that just snaps right into place like that. Pretty easily done. And then we've got to install our weight here. What the weight is going to do is it's going to make sure that this piece, which is going to drop down, always wants to return back up. Now we can move on to installing our soap dispenser bucket. This should be pretty easy actually. So we'll go ahead, unscrew that piece. This will slide up from the bottom. We install that. So once you get those snug together, then there's going to be a little nut on the underside here. And these are all plastic, so you don't have to go crazy tight on them. And like that, we've got this installed. Now in the directions here, it's telling us to first put a small amount of plumber's putty right on the lip for where the drain's going to go down there. So I've got some plumber putty here. Let's see if I can get some of this out. And basically how you do that is almost like as a kid, you want to roll this stuff out. Get that looped around. That we've got everything all mated together. And I'm just going to tamp this down and make sure everything stays in place when we go to install the drain here. Great. So that's all in there nicely. placing the strainer ring right there. And then we're going to place our bowl and our strainer right down through the top here. And then from the bottom, we're going to place the rubber up against the bottom, this paper ring right here, and then we'll go ahead and place our little lock ring right there. So from here, rubber ring, paper ring, and then the metal lock ring. And then now, we just got to tighten it up. With the drain tightened up, our next and last thing to do is we need to add the hooks to the bottom to be able to tighten this against our opening. And then we also got to put some caulking on the outermost edge so that way water can't get underneath. We're going to get these guys. So this is going to have Phillips head on one side, round slot on the bottom, and that's going to allow us to make sure that we get this properly snugged up against the counter. So these will just screw right together. Put a couple of them in. So 3 are going to go across the front, 3 across the back, and then 2 on each of the sides. So for caulking, I'm going to use the silicone caulking from General Electric. I think it'll work just fine. And we're just going to go ahead and cut the top off. That way we can leave a nice bead of caulk. I'm going to do that across the underside here. And just remember that if you do too much, you can always wipe off the caulking later. So now at this point, we should be able to flip it over and drop this down into the sink. And in it goes. So with that dropped in, now we got to go to the underside and try to tighten up those bolts. So once you have these clips tightened up all the way around, remember you're doing 3 on the front, 2 on each of the sides. Now your sink basin will be snugged up, and now it's time to attach the water feed lines. Now one of the water feed lines is going to be marked as the hot water line, so just remember which one of your openings that was. In most cases it'll be the left hand side, so I'll go ahead and start to install those. And then we'll take our cold water line, and thread that on as well. And with that, the water lines are connected, and now we've got to turn our attention to making sure that the drain gets connected up to the piping to go into the main water. So with quite a bit of finessing, I got all of this stuff to work. I ended up having to purchase some separate couplers and that sort of thing, so do expect a few trips down to the hardware store. But now everything's together. This, of course, will vary based on what the underside of your sink looks like. But the next thing to do is to turn the water back on and make sure that everything works. So here, we're going to have our handle, which is our mixer. And everything seems to be working properly.